Welcome to phase 4 of the maze game, and in this section we're going to add in bombs that explode and also blocks that are movable, and they can do lots of things in the game. So here's an example. On this level, once the player collects all the diamonds, the door in the bottom right corner there will be opened, and then that gives the player access to the trigger for the bombs. You want to wait till the ghosts are both in the right spot there. Got them. Okay. So now we're going to go up to the goal, move on to the next room. And in this, whoops, I already made a mistake. Let me start that room level over. Okay, in this room there's blocks that can be moved, and this is nice because you can use it to trap enemies, and also some of these blocks are necessary to reach your goal. As the blocks are dropped onto holes in the ground, then they fill in the holes and you can walk over them and eventually reach the goal. Okay, that's what we'll be doing today, so here's how we do that. First of all, we need to add a few sprites, so click on the new sprite button. SPR_bomb, load sprite, and there it is. Click open, and OK. New sprite, SPR_trigger, load sprite, and click OK. New sprite, SPR_explosion. Okay, this one is a little bit different than you've seen before. Load sprite, find the explosion sprite, and what you'll see is right down here it says number of sub images 16, and there's a new button here called show, and this is frame 0. As I click through all the way up to frame 15, there is the explosion. Okay, so this is an animation. It's a series of 15 images that it plays in a loop unless we tell it to play it one time through, which we will do. Okay, click OK, and it'll just sit there. A couple more sprites. SPR_block, load sprite, choose the block, click OK. And then finally SPR_hole, and find the hole graphic. And click open. Okay, we need a few sounds as well, so let's create some new sounds. SND_explosion. I guess it's called explode. We're also going to grab hole and push. I think that's it. Yeah. So I'll change the name here. Explode. And we'll click OK. Another sound. SND_push. And finally SND_hole. Okay, those are the sounds. We've got sprites and sounds, and now we need to make some objects. Okay, we're going to go through and create all the objects without adding any events or actions, just so that they're all in the list. That way we can reference them as we're creating certain events and actions in other objects. Okay, so the first object we'll create is the bomb, obj_bomb, and the sprite for that is sprite bomb. We'll just click OK on all of these. obj_trigger, obj_explosion, obj underscore block and obj underscore hole. Okay. Okay, let's open up the BOM. And the BOM actually doesn't need any events or actions. It just is a spot on the screen. And but we do need to make sure that all the monsters travel over it rather than underneath it graphically. And to do that, we're going to set the depth to 10. The depth value is how far the specific graphic is drawn as if the camera was looking at it. It's how far away from the camera it is. So if we make the depth 10 and everything else has a default depth of 0, then everything else is going to travel over the BOM, and the BOM will be farther away from the camera, which is looking down at the room. So 10 is great. Everything else will roll on top of it. Let's click OK. All right, the trigger is also a very simple object. Let's set the depth at 10 again to make sure that it's underneath everything. This event, when a player collides with it, so collision with person, it needs to turn all of the bombs into explosions. Okay, we're going to add the action change instance. It's in main 1, so drag that out. And we're going to change all objects of bombs, all bombs, into explosions. And then perform events, yes. And that means the explosion, once it's there, it needs to go through all of its events and do that. Click OK. And that's basically all it does. Click OK. Next, we're going to work on the explosion object, so open that up. And the explosion object will, when it's created, will jump to a given position, okay? And we're going to jump to position, and we're going to say minus 200 for X and minus 200 for Y. Minus 200 X, minus 200 Y, relative. Basically what we're going to do is as soon as the explosion is created, we're going to jump it for just a split second, faster than you can see, out of the way completely. And that will allow us to destroy any objects that happen to be in the area without destroying the explosion itself. And then at the end of destroying all the objects, we'll jump the explosion right back where it started, so that to the player, they don't really see anything except the explosion happening. And then when the explosion's done, there's no more objects underneath it. But you have to do a little bit of trickery. Otherwise, the explosion would destroy itself in the process. So click OK. Make sure that's relative. Click OK. And now we're going to destroy some objects. So go to main 1 and grab the destroy at position. It's kind of fitting. The graphic is a bomb. Okay, and here's where it gets a little tricky. We're going to use a relative location relative to the explosion. And remember, the explosion is now negative 200 away on the x-axis and negative 200 away on the y-axis from where it started. So any objects, we actually want to be at 200 and 200. That's exactly where we started. But we want to get a square around the center point. Okay, and I'll explain this on the board because it's kind of tricky, but just trust me on these numbers. We're basically just going 200 plus 16 minus 16, and we're modifying this so it basically makes a square around the origin point. So the first one is 200 minus 16, 200 minus 16, relative. Click OK. Okay, let's just grab a new one out here. Okay, and this one is 200 minus 16, 200 plus 16, relative. The third one is 200 minus 16, 200 plus 48, relative. Fourth, it's 200 plus 16, 200 minus 16 relative. Fifth, 200 plus 16, 200 plus 16 relative. $200 plus 16, 200 plus 48 relative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we got 3 more. The seventh one is 200 plus 48, 200 minus 16 relative. The eighth one is 200 plus 48, 200 plus 16 relative. And then the final one is 200 plus 48, 200 plus 48 relative. Okay. All right, so we're going to jump the explosion out of the way, destroy everything in this 9 by 9 square area, and then jump the explosion back. So jump to position, and we say 200, 200 relative. Okay. And now that is finished. Well, I'm sorry, we need one more thing. On the animation end, so add event, go to other, and choose animation end. We want to destroy self. Okay. Otherwise, the explosion will sit there and loop and constantly explode, and we don't want that. As soon as it's done with one rotation through the animation, we want to destroy itself. Click OK. All right, the bombs and explosions should work fine now. What we need to work on next is the blocks and the holes. So let's open up the block object. And basically what we need is a collision with a person. So when the person collides with the block, we need to run a test on a position. So grab one of these check empties. And the position we're going to check for is basically we're going to determine that by checking the player's speed vertically and horizontally. And then we're going to multiply that by 8 because that's how quickly the block should move. So here we go. If relative position 8 times other.h speed, I'm going to put some space in here, other.h speed, and 8 times other.v speed. So what we're saying here is take a look at the other's horizontal speed and the other's vertical speed. Who's the other? Well, if this is the block we're working on, then the other is the person. So if the person, we're going to look at the person's speed and the person's speed horizontally and vertically, multiply that value by 8, and that'll tell us which x and y coordinate we're trying to move to. And we're going to check that spot for any solid objects. Of course, we need to be relative to the current location of the block. So it's just looking ahead and it's saying, where are they trying to push me to? Is that spot free of any solid objects? Click OK. If it is free, then let's go ahead and move it. We'll start by playing a sound. We'll play the pushing sound. Looping is false. Okay. And then we're going to jump to position. And that spot is the same equation we just typed in. 8 times other.h speed and 8 times other.v speed relative. Now we need to have an else statement, because if it turns out that, go to control and then grab an else. If it turns out that this area is blocked, if there's something there, some solid object, then we can't move there. So what do we do instead? Well, is there any condition where there might be an object, but we need to move to it anyway? Yeah, if there happens to be a hole there, then we'd still want to move, but we need to take some separate actions. So here's what we'll do. We'll test another object here. But we're going to, instead of checking empty, we're going to check for an object. So I'm going to grab this item right here and drag that out. The object we're looking for is a hole. If there happens to be a hole at that spot, which is 8 times hspeed, other dot hspeed, or 8 times other dot vspeed relative. If there happens to be a hole there, then we'll go ahead and move it. We'll move the object. Same thing up here. Oh man, I'm forgetting this stuff. Okay, we'll go ahead and move it to that spot, and we'll handle the destruction in the whole object. So if the person touches a block, we'll check to see if the way they're trying to move it is free. If it is, we'll play a sound and move the block. Otherwise, we need to check if there is a hole there. If there's a hole there, we'll go ahead and allow it to move. But if this turns out to be false, then it's not going to move at all. So if this is false and this is false, it's not going to move. We are also going to jump in here and make this a parent, make the wall object its parent, so that blocks behave like walls in all other cases. That'll allow monsters to bounce off of them like they would off of a wall. However, that creates a bit of a problem. And so here's the problem. We have what happens when a player collides with a block on this one. And if you click OK here and we go over to our... Okay, so here's the problem now. Since a block is basically a wall object with a bonus ability to move if there's nothing around it, this can create some potential problems with us because we've already told a player to stop moving when it hits a wall object, and that'll make the player stop moving whenever he hits a block. We don't want that to happen. So how can we override this in the case of a block? Well, we just need to be specific. We need to tell a person that, hey, when you collide with a block, don't just use the object wall settings. Make sure we have a specific instruction for a block, and that will override this setting. So we add a collision event. This is in the player, or in the person object. Collision with a block. And actually the instructions, we're going to do nothing. We're going to add a comment, which is found right here. Looks like a little exclamation point. It's in the control tab. Drag that out there. And the comment is do nothing but notify. And the comment does that you can type whatever you want in there, nothing's happening. But that's a note to yourself that what we're basically saying to the computer is when you come in contact with a block, don't take any actions, but we're notifying the computer that this is a block collision. That'll keep it from treating that collision like a wall, and it'll keep it from stopping the player like we do on a wall. All right. Next, we need to set up the hole object. So double-click the hole, and we're going to make its parent a wall object as well. And we're going to add a collision event for a block. What happens when a block collides with a hole? Well, we will play a sound. And the sound is the hole sound, false for looping. And then we will destroy the instance of self. And also we'll destroy the instance other. So that will destroy both of them, and then we'll have nothing there, which will look like the block just filled in the hole, and now we have a regular floor. All right, that should do it. Now you should be able to place bombs and blocks and holes in your room. I'm going to create a new room to test this out. And so we'll go to 32, 32, and I'm going to place a hole there. And I'm going to place a block here. And I'm also going to place a let's see, I'll place a diamond here, and we'll place a bomb next to the diamond, and then we'll place a trigger down here. And of course the player will go right here. And I didn't put any walls or anything in here, so let's just go ahead and run this game. It's going to look strange, but I'll put this right underneath room start. That way we can start the game and test out room 8 right away. Okay, we'll save this and play it. Click the space bar, and here is my room. Turn up the sound here. First, let's test the bomb. Touch the trigger, and it blew up the diamond there. But I didn't hear any sound, so obviously I left something out. Okay, everything looks to be working except for that explosion sound. Let me check that out real quick. Yes, we never played a sound, so we should do that first. Go to main one, grab a sound, put it up at the very top, and explode is the sound. And that should take care of everything. Okay, that's part 4. The only thing left is basically some graphical upgrades. We'll talk about how to make nicer looking monsters and players in our next tutorial. And then you'll get an assignment, and you'll need to create a certain number of levels for a maze game. And you'll get to be creative and design your own game.